This is the Astra's Gaze Gaming Glass Mousepad from Clustrs, and honestly, this is one of the more visually striking glass pads I've tested. Clustrs did send this out to me for review, but as always, all opinions are my own. And just letting you know, the dot gates and sleeve don't come typically with this mousepad, they were added in for me. So thanks Clustrs for sending some extra goodies. You can purchase these as add-ons from the website. As you can see, apart from that, in the box you're getting this, I think it's a microfiber cloth to clean the glass pad, and there's cluster stickers. That's nice. So anyway, the first thing I noticed, and what everyone else will probably notice, is the design. This is like an anime inspired purple eye design. It's called Astra's Gaze, so you can see it's got sort of this whole darker fantasy look to it. I think it'll look great on a desk, especially if you have a more darker setup. According to the website, this was actually hand drawn by Clustrs in-house designer. So yeah, I think the design looks great. I got the purple one, but there are some other designs you can look at from the website. It's pretty striking, especially with the purple against the black. So I think it's a great color scheme. I mean, obviously it looks good, but the real question is, does it perform well? And how it compares to other glass mouse pads, because at $139, this is pretty expensive. That puts it more pricier than other top competitors in this space, like glass pads from Warhack and Razer, in the form of the Razer Atlas or the Pulsar Superglide. So I'm actually pretty interested to see how it stacks up. And after using this for a couple of weeks, I think the answer is actually pretty obvious. This is a good glass mouse pad, but it's not necessarily the best value glass pad for everyone, and I'll explain why. Starting with the basics, it's pretty large at 500 by 400 millimeters. So for FPS gaming, low sensitivity aiming and wide swipes, the size is really comfortable. It's not a full desk mat, but by glass mousepad standards, this is definitely on the larger side. It gives you plenty of usable space without completely taking over your desk. And as you'd expect, it also feels heavy and planted. This is not something that moves around like a cheap cloth pad. A big reason for that is the base. Clustrs uses a full coverage PU anti-slip base, and this is one of the little things I actually really like about the pad. See, some mousepads only use corner feet or smaller grip sections, but here, the base covers the whole pad, so once it's on the desk, it stays there. I mean, you can't really move it unless you actually pick it up or push it with force, but during normal gaming, it's not going to shift around. The mousepad itself is 3.5mm thick, which is a bit on the chunkier side when it comes to other glass mousepads. That's 3mm for the glass top, which is 9H tempered glass, and 0.5mm for the base. And that 9H rating is worth mentioning because it basically means the surface is rated for strong scratch resistance under normal use. That does not mean it's unbreakable, though it's meant to survive falls of up to 1 meter, which is pretty impressive. Clustrs also backs their custom glass mousepads with a 3-year warranty for non-human induced issues like cracking or the anti-slip PU base detaching, with a replacement only policy rather than repairs. Obviously that doesn't cover dropping it or abusing it, but for a premium glass pad, having that kind of coverage is reassuring. Now the surface is where things get more interesting. Clustrs calls this their CLST 1.0 micro etch surface. And I want to be careful here because I've seen people talk about micron etching with glass pads, but I could not find Clustrs officially stating that this is a specific 1 micron surface. So the accurate way to describe it is, this is a micro etched tempered glass surface with an anti-fingerprint coating. And that coating matters because glass pads can get annoying if they show every fingerprint, sweat mark, or a bit of dust. This still needs cleaning, as all glass pads do, but compared to cloth, it is way easier to wipe down. If dust or sweat builds up, you can just use a cloth and clean it off. You're not dealing with fabric absorbing oils, fraying, or slowly changing texture over time. Visually, the surface has more of a satin look than a super glossy mirror finish, and under certain lighting, you can see these subtle, shiny, almost star-like specks through the surface. I'm not sure if that comes from the coating, the micro etching, the artwork layer, or a combination of all three, but visually it gives the pad a more premium decorative feel rather than just looking like a plain slab of glass. And that leads to the actual glide. Compared to a normal cloth pad, this is immediately faster. Your mouse takes less effort to move, flicks feel lighter, and small adjustments feel easier to start. But compared to other glass pads, I would not call this one of the fastest. Based on my own testing and what other glass pad users have said, I'd place Astra's Gaze more in the balanced glass pad category. It's fast, but it still has a bit of control. Something like a Wallhack SP004 or SP005 is generally considered more speed focused and more aggressive. Pads like the Pulsar Superglide are also very much aimed at that fast glass experience. The Astra's Gaze feels a little more grounded. It still glides very smoothly, but it does not feel completely floaty or out of control. And honestly, I think that is both a strength and a weakness. If you're coming from cloth and want to try glass for the first time, this might actually be easier to adapt to than some of the ultra-fast glass pads. There's still enough texture and surface feedback that stopping power does not feel completely gone. But if you already own several glass pads and you're chasing the absolute fastest glide possible, this won't blow your mind. So let's see how the Astra's gaze performs. Here I'm playing Battlefield 6 and yeah, it was a bit tricky to get used to at first. My aim felt slightly wobbly and I didn't have that same locked in pinpoint control I'm used to on cloth. But once I lowered my sensitivity a little and actually just started getting used to the surface, it started to feel a lot easier. Flicks felt faster, corrections felt easier, and I found myself playing better when I leaned into quicker movements instead of the slower, steadier tracking I'd normally use on a cloth pad. Since Battlefield 6 isn't the fastest Twitch game out there, I can see the Astra's gaze being more advantageous in faster titles like Counter-Strike 2 and Call of Duty. And honestly, I'm still not fully convinced that switching to a glass mousepad is definitely better for me personally. It really depends on your aim style, sensitivity, and how much you value speed versus that locked-in control you get from cloth. The surface texture is also pretty comfortable. It has a subtle tactile feel, but it is not rough or abrasive. I also did not find my arm sticking to it badly, which is something that can happen with a lot of other glass pads. But this depends a lot on your skin, room temperature, and how much your hands or forearms sweat. If you're someone who gets sweaty during gaming, you'll probably still want to use a sleeve, especially for longer sessions. The edges of this pad are also done well. Unlike cloth pads, glass pads can feel harsh if the edges are sharp, especially if your wrist or forearm rests near the bottom edge. That's why most glass pads have rounded edges. This has CNC polished rounded edges, so it feels softer when your arm moves across the pad. Obviously it's still hard glass, so of course it will never feel as cushioned as cloth, but the edge finishing helps a lot. Now one thing I really want to talk about is mouse skates, because this can completely change your experience with a glass mouse pad. On cloth, most mouse feet are fine. You can use stock skates and have a great time. On glass, skate material and shape matter way more. I find most full-sized mouse feet, like the stock ones, simply don't work that well with glass pads. They tend to sound scratchy and you'll feel more drag. So using dot skates can make a huge difference since they reduce the contact area and you can add more or fewer dots depending on how much stability or glide you want. Materials matter too. 100% pure grade PTFE is better than the impure kind since it provides less friction. I'll show you the difference. So Clustrs gave me their 100% pure grade PTFE Arctic Glide dot skates. So I attached these to my Dean S9 V2 gaming mouse, which is currently my go-to gaming mouse. You can see here the glide's pretty smooth and quiet. Then with my attack mouse, which already has stock pure grade PTFE feet, the glide is still good, but you can hear a little more scratch and texture from the surface. And then finally, with my MX Master 3S, which is more of a productivity mouse and not really designed for this kind of pad, the experience is much louder and less smooth. So yeah, my point is skates do really matter and can really make or break your entire glass mousepad experience. I just don't want you guys to be buying a glass mousepad and then thinking that it's not good because you don't have the right skates. Now let's talk value. Look, honestly, I think this is a good glass mousepad. It's not bad. It's large, it looks great, the base is excellent, the edges are comfortable, and the surface feels smooth and controlled, and it's easy to clean. But it's also priced in the same general territory as some very established glass pads. You have options like the Razer Atlas, wallhack varieties like the SP005 and SP004, and Polster Superglide series, which are pretty similar in quality, and most of them are cheaper too. Plus, they're more proven in the enthusiast glass pad space. So if you only care about raw performance per dollar, I don't think the Astra's gaze is the obvious winner. I would say it's a good glass mousepad if you're coming straight from cloth, since it still has a decent level of control and isn't just about speed, so it will be easier to get used to. But considering the $139 price tag, I feel this barrier of entry is pretty high for someone who just wants to see what glass mousepads are all about. So yeah, if you like the artwork and design and have some money to burn, this mousepad might appeal to you. But honestly, there are more affordable options out there that do the same thing for less. Anyway, that's my take. I hope you enjoyed this review. It'd be good to know if you agree or disagree with my take on this, and yeah, feel free to like and subscribe for more honest tech takes. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.